My why is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. So together, each of us can change our world for the better. And it's why I wake up every morning, every day. It is the greatest compliment someone can pay me when they say to me, "That was inspiring," or "You were inspiring." Like that feeds me, you know. And the interesting thing about a why is because it is not, it is objective. A why is the sum total of how we were raised. It's born out of the patterns and the lessons we learned from our parents, from our teachers when we're young. And our why is fully formed by the time we're in our mid to late teens. And you only have one why for the rest of your life. It doesn't change. You are who you are based on how you were raised. Now, you may not be acting as your true self. You know, people say that to us all the time, you know. It's like, I don't know who you are anymore, you know. But when you are at your natural best, your why is front and center. But we're not always acting at our natural best. And sometimes we make decisions out of selfishness. We take the job that pays us, that offers us the most money, and turn down the one to work for somebody who would probably be a better mentor. You know, we do these things all the time. And so, you know, can you tweak the words of your why? Of course, you know, but that's semantics. Can we find better ways to bring a why to life? Yes, that's the evolution. But the why itself is fixed. A why is always positive. And I'll give you a real-life example of somebody's why discovery that I did. And you know, one of the things I do when I do somebody's why discovery, I ask them about, you know, happy experiences when they were kids. And this person said, "I didn't have a very happy childhood. I had a really bad childhood." And I said, "Okay, so tell me a bad memory then," you know. And she talked about a lot of abuse in the household and a very abusive alcoholic father who would beat her mother and the kids. And she told a story of a repeated pattern of when the father would be drunk and come looking for the kids that she'd be hiding in the cupboard, protecting her brother with her arms wrapped around him to shield her brother. And she goes through this whole story. And at the end, I pointed out to her that she's a protector, that in these traumatic experiences, it was her instinct to protect her baby brother. And she's lived her life. If you look at all of the times that she's really thrived, and where she's her best self, she's usually in a position of protection of other people. And that's where she finds joy in taking care of other people. And so the experiences mold us into who we are, and the effects, you know, the impact will be positive regardless of where it comes from. So yeah, I mean, a horrible childhood that made her a wonderful human being. The rub about the why, you know, a why is basically the thing we give to the world. It's the value we have in other people's lives. Her friends would say of her that she is our protector. You know, that is the role we fill in their lives, which is why they love us, because we're giving them our why, it is our value. The rub, the most difficult thing about the why to understand, is that the thing that we give to the world is also the thing that we need the most. It's always balanced. And so I would argue that, you know, it's not that she's unable to take care of herself. It's that she needs to find friends, colleagues, whatever it is, who are committed to taking care of her. And that's where the change happens. And, you know, we were talking about this, you know, before the show started. You know, there's an entire section of the bookshop called Self-Help, and there's no section of the bookshop called Help Others. And I believe what we need is the help others industry. I'll tell you something that happened to me. A friend of mine was going through a really rough patch in her life. Her marriage was struggling. Her career was struggling. She was unhappy, like just none of the boxes were getting checked, you know. And she knows what I do. I mean, we've been friends for forever. And she asked a favor. "Can you help me?" "You know, of course," I said. And every week we had a standing 90-minute meeting where she'd come over and she would tell me what's going on. And I would give her some advice and point out some patterns. And she'd feel fantastic. She would leave on a high and she'd feel amazing for like 2 days. And then it'll go right back again. And she'd come back the following week. And this went on for months, 2 days, 3 days, and then back down again. Right. And then it occurred to me, like I remember my own work in Leaders Eat Last. I talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, where they have 12 steps to help an alcoholic beat this disease. And Alcoholics Anonymous knows that if you master 11 of the 12 steps, you're going to probably slide back and succumb to the disease. But if you can master the 12th step as well, you will more likely beat the disease. The 12th step is to help another alcoholic. It's service. And so I remember my own work and I decided to change things up. Right. And so I said to her, "Look, I love that you come and see me every week and I love helping you every week. But, you know, I struggle with things too. And I don't have anybody to talk to. Would you be willing to help me? Maybe we can split the time." And she said, "Of course, yes." And what started to happen is every week we got together and I was genuine. I wasn't faking it, like I would unload and tell her what I was going through and what I was struggling with. And it ended up that we wouldn't split the time. It ended up that she would spend 90 minutes talking about my stuff. Right. And she was the advice giver, and she was the one looking for the patterns. And she would leave on a high, and that I would stay until the following week. It was only when we reversed the scenario where that she had the opportunity to take care of someone she loved, that she was able to find the solutions to her own challenges. And I'm a great believer that we have to remember we're social animals. We need each other. And this is the great paradox of being human. At every moment of every day, we are both individuals and members of groups, you know. And there's a debate. Do you take care of yourself first, or you take care of others first? And there's a whole school of thought that says you have to take care of yourself first. Because if you're not healthy, you can't take care of others. And there's a whole school of thought that says, no, you have to take care of others first so that when you're in need, they'll be there for you. And the answer is, you're both right. You're both wrong. It's a paradox. It's a struggle. And every day we're faced with sometimes big, but often small choices. Do I prioritize myself at the sacrifice of the group, or do I prioritize the group at the sacrifice of myself? And you know folks like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow made a huge mistake in that hierarchy, which is his baseline. Our basic need is food and shelter. Right. I've never heard of anyone dying by suicide because they were hungry. I've heard of people dying by suicide because they were lonely. Right. And yet social relationships in Maslow's hierarchy is number 3. But that doesn't sound right. It seems like there's something more important to human beings than just food and shelter. And then the top of the peak is self-actualization, which sounds the most selfish thing in the world. Like, I am so self-actualized that I would literally sit on top of a pyramid and look down at all of you unactualized people because that's my goal, to be self-actualized. He's half right. The mistake that Maslow made, he's the only thought of us as individuals and as individuals. Yes, I need food and shelter first. But as a member of a group, I need friends and I need love. And self-actualization is not the thing I'm actually in pursuit of as a member of a group. It's shared actualization that I'm looking for. And unfortunately, for various reasons, which we don't have to go down that rabbit hole, the past 30, 40 years, especially in the West, we have doubled down on individualism. We have doubled down on my own career. We've doubled down on how do I find love? How do I find happiness? We've doubled down on selfishness. And it worked for a while. It worked when the economy was really good, like in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. It's awesome. Selfishness was great because it worked. But now in a complicated, messy world where the economy isn't great and everything's not roses, all that self-interest is now not working. Except we haven't been practicing and developing the skills of taking care of each other. And that's what we need now more than ever. And so I don't know your friend. And so I can't make any. I can't make any conclusions. But we are animals in balance, right? And nature abhors a vacuum. And so whenever I hear about these things, my question is always about the balance. So for example, every single good thing that happens in our lives, everything comes at a cost. There's nothing for free. Somebody with an incredible career has no relationship with their kids, right? Everything comes at a cost. But at the same time, everything we struggle with has opportunity and lesson that goes with it. It's always balanced. Right. And so whenever anybody tells me this great thing, I was like, yeah, but at what cost, and was the cost worth it? Sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. And when something horrible happens in someone's life or something goes sideways, I always ask, but what did you learn? You know, I mean, my career and yours is the same. You know, the whole golden circle and the concept of why came out of me losing my passion and hating work. I went through depression. I never want to go through that again. But I'm really glad it happened because look what it's given me, an entirely new life view. And I think of strengths and weaknesses the same way. You know, I think it's hilarious when people say, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Well, it depends. Life is balanced and it's always contextual. And everything that we have that's a strength has liability attached. And every weakness we have has strength that's attached. The single greatest lesson I ever learned in my career that profoundly changed the course of my life. And it comes right before the realization that in the articulation of why, I learned how to ask for help. And I learned how to accept it when it was offered. Okay, and I think that it's not about giving up on someone. It's that helping someone is a team sport. Success is a team sport. And if you find that you're the only player in their life, when they should be the primary player, you can only do the assists. You'll never be the one making the baskets. That's their job. Right. But if they won't take the pass, then at some point you stop throwing the ball. And it's not about giving up on people. It's about accountability to take responsibility for oneself. And giving up on somebody is, don't ever call me again. You don't take my advice. This is over. Right. That's giving up on someone. For I think that the other way to do it is like, listen, I cannot help you if you cannot be involved to help yourself. And I will want to sit down with them and I won't criticize and be like, you're not doing this. You have to follow my advice. You have to do this. You gotta go work at Subway for the week. Like that. That's not what I want to sit down and understand what the blockage is. There's something else. That's the blockage that I can get to, hopefully. But at the end of the day, I will say to them point blank, listen, if you're not going to be involved in this, then there's no point to me being involved. You know, you have to this is a team and I'm the only player here. And so I will always be here. And when you are ready, maybe it's just bad timing. I don't know what's good else is going on in your life. And maybe this is not the right time, or maybe I'm a bad fit. But when you are ready, I will still be here no matter what. But you have to call me. There's no more me throwing you the ball. Like you're going to have to call me. I want to know what else is the blockage. When there's that kind of repeated pattern, then there's something else. And I think, our mistake in those situations is repeating our pattern, which is, okay, I'm going to give you the same advice. I'm going to do the same thing. You're going to do the same thing. I'm going to tell you the same thing. I'm going to give up on you. I'm going to go. Like we're actually repeating a pattern as well. And so, we know this is entrepreneurs, which is you gotta try something completely different. And I think this goes back to what we were saying a moment ago, which is we are not teaching the skills of how to help others. And part of one of the biggest skills of learning to help others is learning how to listen. Most of us are really crap at listening. Right. We confuse listening with hearing the words that were spoken. You're sitting watching TV and, someone you love is trying to tell you something and you're like, and you're still watching TV. You're not even listening to me. And we turn around and repeat all the words back to them. That's not listening. That's hearing the words that were spoken to you. You listening is when the other person feels heard. Right. And where you are in pursuit of meaning, not the words spoken. You're not so literal. Right. And I think in the cases of like your friend, is to go from an advice-giving mode, and men suffer from this more than women, which is, our intention is to fix everything. Right. All we want to do is fix. We see the problem. Here's the solution. But sometimes that's not what people need. People need to feel seen and heard and understood. And maybe, just maybe, you're going too quickly to fix and he doesn't feel seen or heard or understood yet. And in this particular situation, and again, I don't know the person, but I would go to an extreme listening, give the kid the opportunity to empty his bucket. And there's only 3 terms you're going to use in the conversation. Go on, tell me more. What else? Because it sounds like whatever you think the thing is you're fixing, it's probably something entirely different. And until you can get to that, you're going to give up on somebody who maybe it's just that we had the wrong strategy. There are many stories of people who, when the odds were against them, whether they came from extreme poverty or abuse, rose up to have successful and happy lives. Right. And when we read about them, or talk to them, or meet them, or hear interviews from them, they talk about mindset. They talk about, my mother taught is usually the mother. Like my mother taught me to never be a victim. My mother taught me that I was capable of anything. And so they had a mindset, where some people have a victim mindset, and then that's the life they continue to live. Some people have a different mindset, and it can lift them out of what we would consider unprivileged circumstances. Right. So it makes me question then, is mindset a privilege? And we both know people that have every privilege afforded to them, every one of them. And yet, for whatever reason, their mindset is the wrong one. And they can squander all of that opportunity, all of those advantages that they've been afforded, and make a mess. So I question whether mindset is a privilege. There are a lot of privileges in life. Mindset, I think, is one of the ones that is there for the taking. I mean, at what point everybody has a why, and everybody's why is affirmative, And so like I told you about the abuse story, something really positive and someone really positive came out of that trauma. So, I'm struggling to use the word privilege to mindset, because what you're saying is that anyone who's had any kind of luck or turnaround or has privilege, where anyone who hasn't and has failed, it's because of their lack of privilege. Like there's too many other factors involved in that, in those comparisons, to oversimplify it and call it privilege. I'm sure there are privileged components sometimes involved in that, for sure. But if we're strictly talking about mindset, I think I'm not sure. I don't think so. And it doesn't, because the control of our minds is the one thing that we own. It's the one thing that is not. Like we can change the way we view ourselves and how we treat others. And I think what's important, and it's a hard conversation, right? I think one of the things that's important is I think we have to have love in our lives from someone. Like even people who... Like I have a friend who came from a very abusive household. He found his grandmother stabbed to death and the knife was so deep that she was attached to the bed. Like that's how bad it was. Right. And yet he had a coach who believed in him. And so I think to have someone believe in us, to have one person see a spark in us helps us recognize that. It helps us see the spark in ourselves. I think it takes only one person, whether it's a friend or a coach or a parent, a boss sometimes, who takes a liking to us. And almost all of us can remember one person in our lives, which a coach or a teacher who took us under their wing and saw something that we didn't see. And every single successful person on the planet has that person. But I think most of us do. Most of us have somebody who saw something in us, and we are who we are in part because of that person.